Okay, today we are diving into a really powerful theory from Dr. Alan Walker that might just completely change how you see ADHD. The idea is that it's not a disorder, not a deficit, but something much, much deeper. A different kind of wiring for a completely different time. Have you ever found yourself just staring at a deadline? You know exactly what you need to do, but it feels like your body just will not start? Or, maybe you can get lost in a passion project for like 8 hours straight, but the thought of reading one single, important email feels physically impossible. And after years and years of this cycle, it is so easy to land on a much heavier question, right? One you might only ask yourself in a quiet moment. Is there something fundamentally wrong with me? Well, according to Dr. Walker, the answer to that is a resounding no. These struggles have absolutely nothing to do with your character or your work ethic or your integrity. It's all about how your brain is wired. You see, for decades, the story we've been told is one of disorder and deficit, words that make people feel broken. But a new story is starting to emerge, one that reframes this whole thing not as a flaw, but as an evolutionary mismatch, like having a hunter's brain in a farmer's world. This single sentence, right here, it changes everything. It reframes the entire problem. It's not that there's something broken inside of you. It's that there's a gap between your internal wiring and the external world. So, what's the actual evidence for a theory like this? Well, the proof is basically written into the staggering timeline of human history. For 96% of human existence, that's 288,000 years, we lived as nomadic hunter-gatherers. Our modern world of offices, schedules, and mandatory school, that's just a tiny microscopic sliver at the very, very end of that timeline. And get this, scientists estimate it takes roughly 25,000 years for human genes to significantly adapt. So that means we are walking around with brains that are genetically tens of thousands of years behind our current environment. And here's the crucial point. What we call ADHD isn't a flaw in the person. It's a mismatch. The very traits that ensured our survival for millennia are still there, but the world around us has changed so dramatically. So what are these traits we're talking about? Let's take a look at how some of these critical survival skills from our past are now completely misunderstood as modern-day symptoms. First up is something I bet a lot of you will recognize: interest-based focus. This isn't an inability to pay attention, it's an inability to pay attention to stuff that doesn't trigger a dopamine response in the brain. In a hunter-gatherer world, this was a life or death skill. You needed laser focus on the hunt, not on, say, weaving a basket. But today, that exact same wiring means you can build a complex spreadsheet for a passion project, but can't bring yourself to answer 3 boring emails. The wiring is the same. It's the context that's different. Next up is what's often just labeled as distractibility. Dr. Walker reframes this as heightened sensory awareness, basically a nervous system that's constantly scanning the environment for threats and for opportunities. I mean, that skill was invaluable for spotting a predator in the brush. But in a modern open-plan office, that same hyper-awareness makes it totally impossible to focus because your brain is trying to process every conversation, every footstep, every blinking light. A survival skill becomes a liability. All right, let's talk about the biggest one for so many people: procrastination. It's not a choice. It's not a character flaw. It's a neurochemical engine, and it's searching for fuel. 100%. In over 20 years of practice, Dr. Walker reports that every single one of his patients struggles with procrastination. This isn't some weird anomaly. It is the core operating system. And here is why. A hunter's brain needs a clear and present threat to generate the dopamine required for focus. A deadline that's a week away, that's zero threat, so the brain just can't engage. But as that deadline gets closer, the fear of failure becomes a very real threat. Dopamine starts to rise, until finally, in those last few hours, he calls it the drop-dead zone. Maximum fear creates maximum dopamine, and boom, hyperfocus is unlocked. The work gets done, but the cost is just immense. And this is the critical part to get. You can't just will yourself to feel that urgency. The threat has to be real for your brain's chemistry to respond. It's a biological process, not some kind of moral failing.
Understanding this wiring isn't just an intellectual exercise. It's really the first step from a lifetime of shame toward a future of strength. Because the cost of misunderstanding all this is tragically high. The fallout from living with this mismatch in a world that wasn't built for you is severe. It impacts our most important relationships, our ability to meet our potential at work, and it can lead to really serious physical and mental health crises that are all rooted in shame and anxiety. And this is why this reframe is so important. Treatment, in this model, isn't about fixing you. It's about giving your brain the chemical tools, the dopamine, that our safe, predictable modern world just doesn't provide naturally through constant threats anymore. It's like a bridge between your ancient wiring and your modern life. And look, if you take away only one thing from this whole explainer, let it be this. You are not lazy. You are not broken. You are not undisciplined. There is nothing wrong with you. So I'll leave you with this to think about. What if the very things that cause you to struggle in a cubicle are the same exact things that would have made you a brilliant survivor, an innovator, and a leader in the world we were actually built for? What if it's finally time to see yourself in that light?